Hi, everybody. I'm so happy that you're here. Can you guys hear me? It's okay? All right. If this turns on again and you have trouble hearing me, just let me know, and I'll do my best. I'm so happy to have all of you in this shop. I love this shop so much. My great-grandfather grew up in this neighborhood, and he always said that he walked backwards into the Cubs games. I never understood what that meant, but that's what he said, so he could get in for free. And in my mind, when I was a kid, I thought, well, they must have. That was actually my grandfather. My great-grandfather lived here, grew up here also, but then my actual grandfather also lived here, and he was the one that walked backwards into the Cubs games. And I always thought it was because maybe he's like trying to look like he's leaving, but like, I don't know. Or like maybe in like the 1920s or 30s, I don't know. Like, I don't know. That cannot make sense of it, but this was his thing. But he would get into the Cubs games for free, and he went to school around here, and I'm originally from Illinois. I'm originally from Peoria, so somehow they made their way down to Peoria, and then I made my way to Ohio. So Midwesterner, born and bred. I do not think of Midwest as Ohio. I think of it as basically Indiana on. How many of you guys are from Chicago? Where are you guys from? Where's this group from? Dallas. Alabama. Say, New York? Pittsburgh? Charlotte. Atlanta. I love it. All of America's best cities. I love it. I spend so much time. Minneapolis. Ugh, I love Minneapolis. I spend so much time out in America in our cities, and it's not always in LA and New York like a lot of people when they travel, or Chicago, but a lot of time in Pittsburgh, Indiana, or Indianapolis, sometimes Minneapolis, Charlotte. Oh my gosh, I love Charlotte. Of course, Atlanta. America's got just such character right now, and I love it so much. I feel like we're putting stores in a lot of these places too, and this character lives also at Jeni's, which is really exciting. So welcome to this kind of world. We were just talking, I was just talking with the team, how it feels like when you walk into a Jeni's, it's like an embassy almost. It's like this world that you go to, and when you come in, no matter where you're at, if you're in Charlotte or if you're in Chicago or LA, the stores might look a little different, but you have this like vibe that's through and through, and our team, all over the country, they're connected, they know each other, they are like team leaders, have been in the company, a lot of them for a long time. It's a very, like it's actual culture. And when I see it, I see this all, the ancestry of it. I see that it came from the early days in the market, in the farmer's market, when I was there for over a decade working, just me and a couple of like high school kids, doing everything, making all the ice creams, cutting all the cantaloupes or the strawberries or whatever, and turning it into ice creams and helping every customer, and then closing down for the day and then doing it all again every single day. But I see this sort of world, and I think that in a way that's what building a company is. I actually prefer the word company over the word business. They can be used interchangeably, sort of, but when I think of business, I think of the mechanics. It's really important that somebody knows all of those things on your team, but I think of the teachable disciplines of business. So you know, if you want to be in marketing or HR or finance and all of those things, that's the business. And if you know all that stuff, you're like good at business, you know how to do that. But if you're building a company, and this is definitely what Jeni's is, it's about people first. It's always about people first, no matter what it is that we're doing. When we're designing bathrooms, it's about people first. When we talk about ice cream, we're about people first. When we talk about even like making the ice cream, thinking about like where we're going to get the strawberries and who has to cut the strawberries. Even like not just about customers, yes, and about who's cutting the strawberries, because now we have 100,000 strawberries to cut. Who wants that job? So how do we make that easier for somebody so that we can still work with the same farm families that we've been working with for years since the market days? So when I say the company is Jeni's, I hope that you can kind of take nuggets of that into whatever it is that you're doing, and thinking about what part of your organization is a company of human beings working together on a mission, or like I'm a huge science fiction, fantasy nerd, a fellowship, a vision quest to get the ring to Mordor. You know, you all come together with to make something greater than the sum of its parts. You're all, you know, this diverse, amazing group with different talents. You come together, make a fellowship. And then you have this vision quest, and you're all getting there together with various capabilities, including business and the disciplines of business. So that's the distinction that that I make between those two. And I think that Jeni's is a really good example of a company that is a business in some corners, but we're mostly a company. And protecting our resources and protecting every dollar that our customer gives us is hugely important. So our CFO, who's also our COO, like she's incredible and she's amazing and she protects it like she's our bodyguard, right? So we don't waste anything because we want to make the most out of every single dollar. I think that's important too. Okay, so what I want to do, I didn't even know I was going to do that whole speech. But I'm glad I did. That's fun because I'm just so proud of these guys and like what this represents now. So what I want to do is I want to tell you kind of the story of Jeni's, kind of how it evolved, and then its highs are high, the lows are low. It's a story, and I've been through all of it in business, and lived to tell, as you can see. And then we can go into questions, and I will be happy to answer any question that you guys have, and we can just have like a free-flowing conversation. Does that sound okay? Okay, but wait. So first of all, favorite flavors from today? Gooey butter cake. Yeah? That's an Illinois favorite because of St. Louis, of course. Eggnog. Wow. Uncle Nearest is just like the best. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Brown butter almond brittle, my favorite.
Salty caramel.
That was my other favorite until brown butter kind of knocked it off, but it'll come back. That one is made by caramelizing sugar. Salty caramel is made by caramelizing sugar over fire in our kitchen. So when we talk about like people in our company, somebody does that job in a copper kettle with a paddle, and you cannot do it by time or temperature. You have to do it by the way it feels and the way it smells and the way it looks. And then you know it's done. So there's no good, efficient way to do it. We just have to train people constantly on how to get the caramel exactly right. Because when caramel gets a little bit too burned, what you're doing is you're caramelizing sugar, you're burning the sugar a little bit. And when it gets too burned, it actually loses flavor, or loses sweetness. And it becomes bitter. And then if you don't go enough, it doesn't taste good at all. It just tastes like nothing. It tastes like our ice cream ends up tasting like salt water. So it's quite a process. So there are things that we do in our kitchen, I'll tell you about this in a little bit, that only we can do. And I decided this a few years ago. And if anyone else can do it better than us, then we let them do it. Because we have to focus on the stuff that is really hard and really complex. And making caramel, we decided, is going to be one of our, put the flag in, like it's the thing that we do always. So brown butter almond brittle is also a toffee, and that's made by us. So I want to tell you, I started when I was 22. I was in art school, and my family had like blown to smithereens. So I was on my own very, very early. I had barely gotten into Ohio State because I really hated high school, and I barely went to high school. So I got by with straight D's in high school, just enough to graduate. And then Ohio State, when I applied, they were like, no, we don't really allow people like that in here. And on a whim, I didn't know you could do this. I just wrote a letter to them, and I was like, I think you've made a mistake. This is what was happening in high school. My mother had a baby. My dad was in jail. I had a mental illness. My mother had mental illness and all sorts of stuff. She married a guy that was bipolar, and he was very violent. And we were always on the run. And they were like, oh, okay, you can come. So I did. And also I was like, through all of that, I had a job. I was supporting myself, and I learned a lot through that. I loved it so much that I was working like 40 hours a week. And school wasn't a priority. So they let me in, and then I got straight A's. It was great. I loved Ohio State. But I only took the classes that I wanted to take. I took art, I took art history, I took a whole class one time on vampires. It was like a graduate level class, and at Ohio State they have classes like that because it's a huge university of like 100,000 people, and so tons of amazing professors doing literally everything. I took so many amazing classes, and a lot of fine arts. In fact, a lot of this art up here, you'll see my paintings and some of my art. If you look closely, I'm not good at art anymore, but I can do it. And I kind of do it to think now. I draw and paint to think. But anyway, I was studying fine arts. My grandmother was an art teacher. Art was very important to me. And I met this guy who was working in the chemistry department. And this, I think, like, my point here, so as you're listening, is to follow everything that lights you up and excites you everywhere in your life, because this is where you figure out, like, where it all comes together, where you can find something that you love to do, that you can build passion, and also things that people want, like, so where you can create value in the world. So I was doing everything that I wanted to do at Ohio State. And I had a friend in the chemistry department, and he was French, and he was studying perfuming. And he was showing me all of this stuff. I, by the way, has still never taken a chemistry class. By the way, ice cream is all chemistry too, so it was my way in. But I met Julian. He showed me some chemistry of scent. And then I realized how much I love the sense of smell. And maybe I should be a perfumer. When I was a kid, we had forest land, like 10 acres of forest land. It was this huge forest in central Illinois. We had honeybees and maple trees and blueberries and gardens, and I felt like I could always remember the scent from those places. And so one day I thought, can I turn scent into art? Can I combine these things that's not visual, or it's not music, but in a way it is a little bit, because you have notes, but it's scent. So can you make art out of scent? In a way that I was thinking about in the art classroom. And that was when I hit on ice cream. And so I had worked in an ice cream shop when I was young, and I knew how people loved ice cream. I loved, even when I was growing up, I loved the culture around ice cream. Ice cream wasn't my favorite dessert. I feel like it's not anybody's favorite dessert. Everybody just loves ice cream. But when you think about, like, your list of desserts, most people don't put ice cream on the list. It's like pecan pie and lemon bars and chocolate cake and all this stuff. I mean, ice cream is sort of there, but, like, it never wins, like, a dessert competition for that reason. It's always like a brownie or something like that. But everybody does love it. And I think the reason is because ice cream is like a culture. There's all this stuff around ice cream in the way that, like, other desserts don't really have. I mean, cookies are great, but there's not really this culture around cookies the way that there is in ice cream. And I loved that so much, even when I was a kid. And so I knew about ice cream because I'd worked there and I'd followed ice cream since I was a kid. And I knew about perfuming and scent because I'd read all these books on ancient perfumers. After I met Julian, I got super into scent. And I knew that ancient perfumers they would steep flowers and other materials in, like, oils that were solid at room temperature but melted on contact with your body. Not all fats are like that. Not all oils are like that, right? So there's different ones. But butter fat, which is the fat that's in cream, is exactly like that. It's solid at room temperature, but as soon as it hits your tongue or your palm of your hand, it relaxes. All the flavor comes out. That's why you can put butter on literally anything and make it better, because it will pull the flavor of whatever it touches into your olfactory and then bloom that beautiful butter flavor. So butter is a carrier of scent, and that's what cream is made out of. It's like basically butterfat and water. So I made ice cream. I had this idea that I was going to make ice cream with scent, and I was going to use ice cream as the carrier of scent, the way that an ancient perfumer might use like a coconut oil, right? And so the moment I did that, I actually bought store-bought ice cream and I smushed rose petal essential oil into it, which is like $400 an ounce. It was this tiny, I had like 4 drops, and it was like $25 for like 4 drops of it. And I put it in vanilla ice cream, and I made this beautiful Bulgarian rose vanilla, and I took it to a party. And when you ate, and I also did a spicy chocolate, so I had like a cayenne essential oil that I mixed into chocolate, thinking that I was clever, that I was going to make this hot chocolate. I didn't know that they did this in Mexico for like thousands of years. I thought I invented that, and thank goodness I stayed naive and thought I invented that for like a long time, because it was really the force behind starting the business. So I took those to a party, and it was amazing. So when you're eating ice cream, and even today when you're eating ice cream, and get more if you want some, it's all about scent. It's all scent. So the moment I tasted that rose petal, and it was like cold, and then you taste the sweetness, sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and this other thing called umami, you taste on your tongue and in your mouth. Everything else is a scent in your nose and in your olfactory, which is behind your nose. So you can only taste 5 things-ish on your tongue that we know of right now. There might be like 6th one coming up now. Everything else, there are hundreds, thousands of combinations you can taste or you can perceive in your nose. And once I tasted that that rose, it was like, yeah, it was cold, and that sort of shocks you and wakes you up. It was sweet. That starts to build once your tongue warms up a little bit. And then it starts to bloom. All that butterfat that was loaded with rose, or vanilla, or brown butter, or mint, or chocolate, or coffee, or any of those flavors, all of those scents that are stuck and locked into that butterfat start to volatilize into your nose. So will you ever see ice cream again the same way when you taste it like that? When you start to almost like smell it like in reverse, right? And so when I make ice creams, I think about how it blooms, how it melts, and it's like, I think of it like poetry. Like, it's not, I mean, I think it's pretty, but it's not that pretty on the outside. Not like a cake. I mean, not like on the Food Network where you see a cake, which is like gorgeous, and then maybe you eat it and it's like one-dimensional. It's good, but it's like, you know, I think of ice cream like it's beautiful on the inside. It's like poetry. You know, you have to kind of sit with it a little bit. You can actually like go through like a little meditation in a way with ice cream as the flavors bloom and you go on that like journey with it. Starts out a little harder, softens, as it softens, flavor comes out a little bit more. I saw all of this the moment that I made that rose petal ice cream. And I'm not kidding, 2 days later, a model walked into the figure drawing class. I was in a figure drawing class, which is like when naked people come in and you draw them. And it's super fun, but it's 3 hours, and so it's a long time. And there was a model that I couldn't draw very well because I like to draw very big and round people. Like I like drawing round with my, like big on a paper. And she was very tall and thin, and I just could not get it right, so it never looked good. So I was really excited about going home and making ice creams and not excited about sitting there for 3 hours and drawing this model. This is the true story. She actually works still at Whole Foods, and I see her all the time. So I left. I just got up and walked out, and I left my portfolio and all my supplies there, and I went home and made ice cream. And I started my first little ice cream company in the farmer's market in 1996, just a couple months later. I convinced a friend of mine, well, her parents, to give us $20,000, and they did. And we started our little ice cream company called Scream Ice Cream, and I worked there for 4 years. I made every single mistake you could possibly make. I had no idea what I was doing at all. I thought I knew how to make ice creams, but I didn't. I was just making them on these little machines, and now I had this big one, and nothing was working. It took all 4 years to finally get the ice creams right, and then still it wasn't really working. People weren't really coming to the shop. I was working all of the hours myself, and I burned out. I couldn't do it anymore. I was there for 4 hours, 4 years, every hour that we were open for all of that time. It was really like every single day. So I kind of burned out. It wasn't going anywhere. I closed the shop and left and went back to school a little bit, went and worked at a bakery, and decided that I was never going to make ice cream again. I was going to go be a teacher or something else. But in my community, nobody would let me do that. They kept finding me wherever I was working and wanting the ice cream back. And if I was out having dinner, somebody would buy me dinner or send me a drink, and everybody wanted to know where it was. And that was really great. I felt like the community, there was this love for the community. And one day I was in a coffee shop, and this is in 2001, in the summer-ish or spring. And I went to this coffee shop with a magazine because we didn't have phones back then like we do now. You would go and you would read a magazine for like 4 hours. It was the most fun. You would just read and drink some coffee with like all the people. And that was going to be my entire Saturday, and I was really excited to go to this coffee shop. They had this orange scone. Oh, let me tell you something really quick. I'm skipping a part because Scream Ice Cream, I was thinking like an artist still, because I thought that everybody, kind of my whole model was about making whatever flavors I wanted to. So I was making everything from the market. So if the cheese guy had this amazing goat cheese, I would make it into ice cream. Or if the wine people got like some champagne, I would make a sorbet out of the champagne and some fresh apricots or whatever. If there was basil in the market, I would make basil ice creams or rose petal or whatever. Whatever's in the market, whatever I felt like making that day was what I made. And it didn't do well, and we obviously closed. And when I was at this coffee shop this one day, I wanted this scone that they had because it was delicious, and I was really craving it. And when I got to the front, they were out of it. And they didn't care that they were out of it. And I thought, like, but that's like the only reason I'm here. And it dawned on me that this is what I was doing to all of our customers at Scream, because I was making whatever I wanted to each day, But I knew that people wanted salty caramel and wild berry lavender and all the flavors that were popular that I just made whenever I wanted to. And I thought that was a really good idea. And it dawned on me in that moment that the only thing that brings you back to any business that you go to, whether it's the drugstore or, you know, the coffee shop or wherever, is what you had last time. And you might change your mind when you get there, but you have to at least have that. And so once I realized that at this coffee shop, because I was putting I was putting that position myself, the wheels started turning again, and I immediately wrote a new plan. And this new plan was about Jeni's. The new plan was about, we have always, you know, the tried and true sellers that everybody loves, brown berry crisp, brown butter almond brittle, salty caramel, and all of those beautiful flavors. But then we also can experiment every season. So season, we'll have like seasonal flavors that come back that we know everybody loved last season. And then we usually do a few more. And then those can move their way up to the signature list if people really love them. But we never run out, except in COVID, there was like one time, we never run out. That's the idea of like salty caramel and those. So you can really rely on that. If those are your favorite flavors, we'll always have them. And that changed everything. It changed everything overnight. At Jeni's, we had a big line. People kept coming back. They came back. From day one, I would say, people come here for salty caramel. People come here, they drive from Kentucky to get salty caramel, because I was referencing Scream. And I could do that because I knew that people really did do that. And then, of course, at Scream, I wouldn't have it for them, which was embarrassing. But it took me a long time to learn that lesson. So I kind of worked out those kinks, opened Jeni's in 2002, and then I started learning all the other lessons that I had to learn about ice cream production. We were making everything in the farmer's market in our little shop, which was about as big as this area here. And that's from 2002 to 2006. And then we opened our kitchen outside of the market. That was something we were forced to do. We knew we would eventually. But the ag department, who's in the food business? Anybody have like a restaurant kind of food business? Yes, kind of, yeah. So if you're like a restaurant in any city in America, you get a health department license. So you just go to the local health department, you get a license, and they come back once a year and you get the license, you're good. But if you're going to, and that's if you sell something that you made on site over the counter or somebody sitting down. But if you are going to package it up, take it next door to Foxtrot, and then they're going to sell it for you, then you have to have an ag department license. That's the state agriculture department. That's a very different license. So we had to become a milk processor, basically, and we had to have a milk processing license, which is 2 inspections a month. You go from having one, in a year to 2 a month, and now you're sending out samples, and you're, it's just a very different process, which was cool. It was great to learn, but it was a little too early. I wasn't ready for it. We knew that we needed to open another store in order to pay for that. And so that was our first freestanding store outside of the market in 2007. So we opened our kitchen. Actually, we did that backwards. We opened the kitchen in 2007. We meant to open the other way, but it wasn't that way. So we opened our kitchen in 2007. We opened our first shop out of the market in 2006. I was terrified. I thought nobody would come. I didn't think anybody knew who we were. So we made a really beautiful little storefront and a wonderful little walking district sort of area in Columbus. And people were lined up out the door and down the block. And it was amazing to see that. I had no idea that people knew us outside of the sort of downtown area. And what I realized pretty quickly is that when you start to have volume, you can start to get people to grow things for you. The dairies are now asking you, what can we do for you, instead of like me begging them to do things. I started working with a vanilla bean supplier directly from Uganda. We opened our second store very close after that because there was another space. Now it's like, once you show that you can be successful, the developers come after you. The landlords come after you. And so then we found this other space pretty right away. And that was amazing. I realized that you can actually make better ice creams as we get bigger. Because we didn't have access to a lot of this stuff. We were still buying a lot of stuff literally from the grocery store or just the farmer's market. And now we were having entire fields of strawberries grown just for us. So that's been kind of our mantra basically ever since. So 2006 and 2007, we do that. In 2009, I brought in a CEO. I knew that we needed that kind of organizational leadership. We needed somebody to come in and just really organize it and keep us safe and keep the company achieving its goals so that I could still focus on company culture, creativity, flavors, and then making the ice creams better, because we talk about it every day at Jeni's, even now, about making the ice creams better, like this idea that better is better than best, because best is somebody else's idea and it's already been done, and a lot of other people are trying that, but better never dies. It never quits. You're always going, and eventually you get way out front. So that's just the idea, is just a little bit better every single day in every department at Jeni's. And so we were doing that. And I knew that I needed help really managing it. And so I brought in a CEO, which was great. He actually just left. We have a new CEO who's also amazing. And we worked together. We always said like the two-headed monster. So I was taking care of brand, community, all of that, and he was taking care of the operations and what I would say like the business functions. And so we were working together kind of in harmony, I think, in that point. I want to tell you this. I want to tell you the story of this sort of the lowest moment of our company, because it's important, and I feel like every company gets there. But up till now, it's been this fun story, and now we're going to pivot to a dark place, kind of. In 2015, we got a call, John and I, the CEO and I, well, John got a call, I was in the room, that a pint of our ice creams tested positive for listeria. And that was in Lincoln, Nebraska, of all places. We don't have a store in Lincoln, it was just in a little shop there. And we had a decision to make, because listeria is not the call that you want to get. It can be very, very dangerous to people. It can actually, it can kill you, especially if you're pregnant or older or younger. And we were really scared that we didn't have a good way to know whether there was any other listeria in any of the other ice creams, or if it was just one pint. You could do a lot of testing, but every test that you do takes 5 days. And we felt like we didn't have 5 days to wait. And by the way, at the same exact time, Bluebell in Texas had just gone through their things. They were a month into their recall, but they were doing it differently. They were actually 3 years into working with the FDA after they found listeria in their kitchen. But we didn't know that because the media wasn't reporting on it. They had strung it along for 3 years, and we didn't even know about it at the time. But instead of doing that, what we decided to do is, within about 20 hours, we didn't go home that day, we stayed there, we figured out what to do, create a plan to recall every ice cream that we had out in the world. From all of our stores, close the stores. By the way, this is in April. We have no money, because it's just coming out of winter and we're an ice cream company. We have all these stores open. We just opened LA, and it was like 700 people came to the LA opening. It was like it was like all the rage in LA. I had made the best, coolest collection of my entire life. It was called the Colors Collection. It was all about what does color taste like. It was so cool. We had artwork, we had these new pints, like it's amazing. And then we get this call. And so we have to shut everything down, bring all the ice creams back. We have no way to make ice cream. And even if we did, our ice creams take a long time to make. You have to grow the strawberries first. We can't just make the ice creams again. So in choosing to recall everything, we thought we were closing the company. We thought it was over. We had almost no doubt. I think we probably had no doubt that it was over at that point. But we knew that we couldn't live, and I think our team would have kept us accountable to that too. Every single person in the company, that living to our values meant that we had to recall everything. We could not take that risk. So we brought it all back. Actually, we didn't bring it all back. We sent it to an anaerobic digester in Philadelphia, or near Philadelphia. So we turned it into power for homes, which is cool. 265 tons of ice cream. There's a lot of ice cream. And we were off the shelf in Whole Foods. We had worked so hard to get on Whole Foods. It takes years to get that shelf space. And it was like, we were going to dinner with everybody from Whole Foods for like years. It's a lot. It's a lot to get into those. All the mom and pop groceries across the country. We've been working with Foxtrot, which is right next door. You guys should pop in if you can. Such a cool business model. But we had all these amazing smaller grocers that we worked with, and we had to give up that shelf space. And we had to tell them, give it to somebody else, give it to one of our competitors because we're not going to be back anytime soon. It's a really hard thing to do as a company. And I just have to interject there. By the way, every one of those grocery stores saved space for us. They didn't fill it with our competitors. We went to a food show that year, and I had to stand there with no product, just to talk directly to our customers, which are the buyers at the grocery stores, and tell them that we're going to do our best to get back, but you have our permission to put somebody else on the shelf and make money off of that space. And to a person, they all said, we don't want to. First of all, we make more money on your ice creams, because in wholesale, they do. And second, we're with you. It was amazing. So our stores were closed, and these young women came out in Columbus and started putting little Post-it notes on our door and left Post-it notes for other people to put on our doors with messages. So our doors start to get covered in messages like a prince died or something. Flowers, at our door. We still have all of them. We saved them all over our Facebook. There were messages. There's always trolls, there's always haters. Somebody's coming out. Somebody likes the other ice cream company, so they're coming out using it as their chance or whatever. We had this whole army of people who were coming and defending us because we didn't have a voice, because you don't have a voice when you're under the authority of the FDA. We ended up not finding more listeria, which was awesome. I mean, we knew it was coming from our kitchen. We found it. We figured it out. But we did not find any more in the ice creams. That was great. So we felt very good that nobody else is going to be sick. So we in doing that, we believe we prevented an outbreak. It's still possible that there could have been some that we just didn't test. So all of that was really great. And then the clock starts ticking. We have to try to figure out how to get back into our just survive. And that is where I think we were the most creative that we have ever been, ever in the history of this. I would say we're a creative-led, community-spirited company. Those days after we stabilized from the recall and then got ourselves back up and running were the most creative we've ever been. And actually, this leads us into the things that I learned about production. I think sometimes, especially when you get in the crisis, and this is true, by the way, of human beings too, when you get into this place where you are broken and there's nowhere else to go, you're at the bottom, the rules are different. You can do things differently. You can defy your own rules. It's cool, actually. It's not unfun to be there. It's just weird. You're about to die and you're actually it's just different. So you can do things that you might not normally do. And I'm not saying defy your values, but for instance, I thought in order to be considered artisanal ice creams, which isn't precious to me anyway, but I thought you had to make everything on site in your facility. And I would never have budged from that. And I was trying to figure out how to save our company, and John was trying to figure it out, everybody was trying to figure it out. And weeks went by, and I had no way to do it. I had no ideas. And all of a sudden I get a call from one of the ice cream makers in Cleveland. Actually, this one was in Napa. And he was like, come make your ice cream out here. And I was like, I looked at that for a while, but I was like, we can't get it over the Rockies, we can't do it. And then the guy from Cleveland, ice cream maker, calls, come make your ice cream up here. And we tried, but his dairy wasn't the same one we were used to, and it wasn't working. And about 4 other ice cream makers called me. It was the coolest thing. It was just the most amazing thing, ice cream makers coming in to say, we have all the stuff that you need, just come do it here. And so we ended up working with our dairy that we'd worked with for many years, who's sourcing milk and cream directly for us from all the farms in Ohio. We work with these amazing small farms in Ohio. They have this $1 million ice cream plant that goes unused part of the time. Actually way better equipment than we had. And I can't believe I never thought that why don't we burn our caramel and do the stuff that only we can do and let them freeze it. And what also happens when you do that in ice cream is that it becomes more efficient because we only have to pasteurize once, so it's more delicious because we're not pasteurizing twice. We can hold on to those milk proteins, which at Jeni's, we don't use stabilizers or emulsifiers or egg yolks or corn syrup, and those are stabilizing ingredients. That means the ice cream can melt and refreeze many times and not lose quality, but we don't use those. It's just milk and cream and sugar and then other ingredients. It's really hard to do it, actually. But it relies on the milk proteins being intact, which means they have to be super fresh, and if they're only pasteurized once, they're really, they're good. So the proteins themselves thicken the ice cream. That's kind of nerdy, but it's how we do it. So I found that if we do this at the dairy, it's actually better. So then we start looking for everybody to do this for us. Like, oh, we're in Ohio. Like, there's jam makers all over this entire state. Like, why am I still making the brambleberry jam? It's the easiest thing we do. It's literally like berries and sugar, you boil it and it's done. They have all the pots. They have all the stuff to do that. So let them do that. They're doing that. So if we're making candies or whatever. So we just chose, what are the things that we're doing that nobody else can do? Caramel, as I said, chocolate, marshmallows. We actually make our own marshmallows when we do marshmallows a lot of times because we have a special recipe, it's hard to do. And all of those things. So those things still get done in our kitchen today, and then we take them to the 5th generation dairy that we work with, which is, by the way, right across the street from Smucker's. We don't work with Smucker's, but you know Smucker's. When you're 26 years into a business, there are a lot of stories, and I feel like I can just keep going on and on. But what I would rather do is pivot to questions and conversation, like whatever you want to say. If you want to speak, speak. And let's do that. Is that okay? Okay.